Chapter 6, The Sinister Truth. Evelyn didn't move. Clara watched as her twin's jaw tightened, her fingers twitching at her sides. She had struck a nerve. And that meant she had a chance. Clara swallowed her fear and pressed on. You wanted to believe Mom was just a monster, that she threw you away because she was weak. Evelyn's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. But what if that's not the truth? Clara whispered. What if she gave you away because she was trying to save you? Evelyn's nostrils flared. You're lying, she said, voice sharper now, defensive. Clara shook her head. You said it yourself, one twin always dies. But what if the curse isn't random? What if there was always a reason? Evelyn stiffened. Think about it. Think about it, Clara continued, her voice steady. Mom didn't just erase you from my life. She erased you from everyone's. No records, no birth certificate. Why would she go that far, unless she knew something about you? Evelyn took a step forward, shadows stretching across her face. And what exactly are you saying? Clara held her gaze. You weren't the twin she was protecting. I was. The air in the basement thickened with silence. Evelyn's breathing turned slow and shallow. And then she laughed. Not a loud mocking laugh, a quiet, eerie chuckle like a secret she had always known but had never spoken aloud. You really think you're the lucky one? She whispered. You think she saved you? Her head tilted, her grin widened. No, Clara. She crouched down, so close their faces almost touched. She was hiding you from me. Went still. Evelyn's fingers trailed along the rope binding Clara's wrists. Our great-grandmother had a twin too, she murmured. Know how she died? Clara clenched her jaw. Strangled in her sleep, Evelyn said, voice soft, almost dreamy. And my grandmother? Her sister drowned in the lake behind their house. She leaned in, breath warm against Clara's ear. And Mom? Well, she had a twin too. Clara's blood turned to ice. Evelyn smiled. But you wouldn't know that, would you? Clara's mind was spinning. Mom had a twin, but she never mentioned it, never spoke of it, because she wasn't alive to tell the story. Evelyn's voice turned mockingly sweet. Guess what happened to Mom's twin, Clara? Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Evelyn smirked. She died in her crib. Mom survived. Just like you did. Her fingers tightened suddenly, nails digging into Clara's skin. And just like me. Clara's chest tightened. It wasn't just a curse. It was a pattern. Every generation one twin lived, the other didn't. Not because of fate, but because one always killed the other. A sickening realization flooded Clara's mind. The moment Evelyn had found out she was a twin, this was always going to happen. She never wanted to steal Clara's life. She wanted to finish what every twin before her had started. This was never about revenge. This was about survival, and only one twin could live. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. Evelyn saw it. She reached into her pocket, pulling out something small and sharp. A blade. Don't worry, sister, she murmured, twirling the knife between her fingers. I'll make it quick. Clara's breath hitched. This was it. Evelyn had always planned for this moment. It didn't matter how perfectly she played Clara's role, how much she wanted her life. Deep down, she had always known one of them had to die. And she had no intention of letting it be her. Evelyn moved closer. Clara forced herself to think. If she didn't act now, she wouldn't get another chance. Her fingers inched toward the rope binding her hands. The knot was loose. If she could just... Evelyn raised the knife. Clara struck first. She yanked free, throwing herself forward with every ounce of strength she had left. Evelyn was fast, but Clara was desperate. They collided, the knife slicing through air instead of flesh. They crashed to the floor, a violent tangle of limbs, nails, and fury. For the first time, Evelyn wasn't in control. She wasn't prepared for Clara to fight back. For the first time, Clara wasn't running. She was fighting for her life, and she was going to win. Chapter 7, Taking Back My Life. Clara had never fought for her life before, but now she had no choice. Evelyn was on top of her, fingers tightening around her throat. The knife gleamed in her grip, poised for the final strike. Clara's vision blurred. Her lungs burned. Not like this. Her hands scrambled against the cold basement floor. There had to be something. Anything. Her fingers closed around a shard of broken glass. With every ounce of strength left in her body, Clara swung. The glass sliced across Evelyn's arm. Evelyn screamed as the knife clattered to the floor. Clara didn't hesitate. She shoved Evelyn off her, gasping as air rushed back into her lungs. Evelyn clutched her bleeding arm, eyes burning with rage. "You little—" Clara didn't let her finish. She grabbed Evelyn by the collar and slammed her into the wall. "You stole my life," Clara hissed, voice shaking with fury. "You tried to erase me." Evelyn laughed through the pain. "You were never supposed to survive." Clara's stomach twisted. For Evelyn, this wasn't personal. This was destiny. The curse, the pattern, the belief that one twin had to die for the other to live. Clara had spent her life not knowing Evelyn existed, but Evelyn had spent hers knowing exactly what she had to do. And she had almost won. Almost. Clara's grip tightened. She was done being hunted. She was done running. With a guttural cry, she threw Evelyn to the ground. The imposter hit the floor hard, groaning. Clara grabbed the knife. She had seconds to decide, to end it, to make sure Evelyn could never come after her again. Her pulse thundered, but then a voice echoed in her mind. One twin always dies. Clara wasn't like Evelyn. She refused to let this curse define her. Instead, she took the knife and slashed Evelyn's palm. Evelyn screamed as blood dripped onto the floor. Clara glared down at her. "Now they'll know," she panted. "They'll see the difference." Evelyn's eyes widened. Clara grabbed a chair and shoved it under the doorknob, trapping Evelyn inside. "You can't do this," Evelyn shrieked, lunging for her. Clara stumbled back out of reach. "Watch me." Then she ran. Clara's legs burned as she sprinted through the house. Evelyn hadn't stolen her memories. She tore through drawers, searching. There, a photograph. Her mother holding 2-bay proof. She snatched it and turned just as the front door swung open. Mark. Her husband froze. His eyes widened. Clara? Her chest tightened. His expression was a mix of shock, relief, confusion. He stepped forward cautiously like he was seeing a ghost. Clara's breath shook. This was it. She held up her hand, revealing the deep cut on her palm. "Check her hand," she whispered. Mark's brows furrowed. "Evelyn," Clara rasped. "Check. Her." Hand, a long tense beat, then a blood-curdling scream erupted from the basement. Mark's face paled. "What the hell?" Clara grabbed his hand. "That's not me." His confusion cracked. Realization sank in. Without another word, he rushed past her. The truth revealed. By the time the police arrived, Evelyn had stopped fighting. She was cornered. The evidence was undeniable. The fingerprints, the blood test, the hospital records, everything proved Clara was real. And Evelyn, she was nothing but a ghost wearing Clara's face. As she was dragged away, her eyes never left Clara. "This isn't over," she whispered. Clara's stomach twisted, because deep down, she knew Evelyn was right. The house was quiet again. Mark and the kids had fallen asleep, exhausted from the nightmare. But Clara couldn't sleep. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her fingers ghosted over her throat, bruised from Evelyn's grip. Her palm scarred from the cut that saved her life. She had won. But at what cost? She had a sister, and now she had lost her all over again. She turned, reaching for a box in the closet. Inside, her mother's old letters. She hesitated, then opened one. "Forgive me," her mother's handwriting. "I did what I had to do. I hope one day you'll understand." Clara exhaled shakily. She understood now, but forgiveness, that would take time. She set the letter down and climbed into bed beside Mark. His arm instinctively wrapped around her, pulling her close. Safe, loved, alive. For the first time, Clara knew the truth. And this time, she would never forget who she was. The real Clara was back. And no one, not even Evelyn, would take her life again. Epilogue, a shadow that lingers. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cemetery. Clara stood before the gravestone, her fingers trailing over the name etched into the stone. Evelyn Hartman, her twin's name. But the grave was empty. Evelyn wasn't dead. She was locked away, serving time for identity theft, attempted murder, and assault. But to the world, the sister she never knew existed might as well be buried here. Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. She should feel safe. She should feel free. But deep down she knew Evelyn wasn't gone. She never would be. A month had passed since the truth came out. The kids were safe. Mark was safe. Clara had her life back, but something still felt off. Maybe it was the nightmares. Maybe it was the scar on her palm. Or maybe it was the letter waiting in her mailbox that morning. A prison envelope. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper inside. Do you really think this is over? You should have killed me when you had the chance. Because one day the doors will open, and when they do, I'll be coming home. No signature. Just a single smudged fingerprint. Evelyn's. Clara clenched the letter in her fist, her pulse pounding. She could burn it. She could pretend it never came. But no matter what she did, Evelyn was still out there, waiting, watching. And Clara knew one day they would meet again. Because their story, it wasn't over. Not yet. Clara sat in her car outside the prison, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. The letter had been sitting on her nightstand for weeks. Evelyn's words had haunted her, whispering through her dreams. One day, the doors will open, and when they do, I'll be coming home. Clara should have ignored it, but she couldn't. She needed to see Evelyn one last time, to end this, for good. The prison visiting room was cold, sterile. Clara sat in front of the glass partition, her reflection staring back at her until a door buzzed open, and Evelyn walked in. She looked different, thinner, paler. But her eyes were exactly the same. Sharp, calculating, dangerous. Evelyn sat down across from her, picking up the phone. Clara hesitated before doing the same. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Evelyn smiled. You got my letter. Clara's grip on the phone tightened. Why did you send it? Evelyn tilted her head. Why did you come? Clara exhaled sharply. Because I want this to end. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. And how do you suppose that happens? Clara met her gaze. You stay here. You never come near me again. You never even think about my family again. Evelyn chuckled. And if I do? Clara's eyes darkened. Then I won't make the same mistake twice. Evelyn's smirk faltered. She stared at Clara as if really seeing her for the first time. Then she let out a slow, amused breath. There she is, Evelyn murmured. The real Clara, the one who knows how to survive. Clara didn't respond. Evelyn leaned back. I always wondered how this would end, you know. Maybe I'd kill you. Maybe you'd kill me. Her lips curled. But this is almost better. Clara didn't move, because for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't haunted. She was done. Clara stood, placing the phone back on the receiver. Evelyn watched her, waiting. But Clara didn't give her the satisfaction of a final word. She simply turned and walked away. For good. The sky was gray when Clara stepped outside. Cold air filled her lungs, sharp and crisp. She glanced back at the prison walls, the high fences, the barbed wire, and for the first time, Evelyn was just a person in a cage. Not a nightmare, not a curse, not her problem. Clara turned the key in the ignition, hands steady. Her reflection stared back at her in the rearview mirror. Her, Clara Hartman. The only Clara. She drove away without looking back because Evelyn was her past, and she had a future to live, a real life to reclaim. For the first time in forever, Clara was free. And just like that, Clara's story came to an end. Or did it? Evelyn's shadow still looms, and the chilling truth remains. Some ghosts never stay buried. Could Clara's nightmare return, or will Evelyn's promise become a reality? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this twisted tale, make sure to subscribe for more spine-chilling stories and shocking twists. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, you might be next.